My name is Evan Meyer, and I'll be doing my presentation on the influence of Aboriginal and European foods in modern Australian cuisine. The reason I chose Australia is because its food culture is a fascinating blend of Indigenous traditions and European influences. These two distinct food cultures merged and evolved, creating the diverse and modern Australian cuisine we know today. Going over a map and brief history, we'll be going over the arrival of Aboriginal people. Around 50,000 years ago, the first settlers were the Aboriginal people who arrived in Australia. At the time, the sea levels were lower and the land was not as fertile, which made settlement difficult for the Aboriginal people at first. After population growth, over time the climate improved around 10,000 years ago. The population of Aboriginal people began to grow, which helped them evolve into the 17th century. The first European sighting of Australia came from the Dutch explorer William Janszoon in 1606 aboard the ship Duifken. In the 19th century, 1770, British explorer Captain James Cook landed at Botany Bay on the eastern side of Australia aboard the HM bark Endeavour, marking the beginning of the British interest in Australia. Going on to slide 3, fruits such as mangoes, pineapples, and bananas thrive in warmer tropical climate of Queensland and Northern Territory. Seafood is abundant, especially in the coastal areas of the Great Barrier Reef, and is a key ingredient in northern dishes. In the temperate regions, viticulture, Australia's wine regions, benefit from the Mediterranean-like climates ideal for growing grapes. The country is known for producing world-class wines, including Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Chardonnay. Dairy and grains come from the southern parts of Australia, particularly in the regions Victoria and Tasmania, are now renowned for dairy farming as well as the production of wheat, barley, and other grains such as olives and citrus fruits that are flourishing in the temperate zones. In the arid interior, also known as the outback or desert foods, the central regions of Australia are characterized by the extreme temperatures and minimal rainfall. Agriculture here is limited, but the land does support native bush foods. For example, wattle seed, bush tomatoes, and bush peppers, which are integral to indigenous Australian cuisine. When it comes to livestock, in arid regions, cattle ranching and sheep farming are common, as livestock can graze on native grasses and shrubs that thrive in the drier interior. This has made beef and lamb staples in Australian diets. For Aboriginal food, pre-contact foods, and ancestral diets, indigenous diets were diverse and based on regional availability, such as key foods, seeds, nuts, corn, beans, chili, squash, wild fruits, herbs, and meats. To go along with that is also the corn, beans, and squash, known as the Three Sisters, that provided complete nutrition and represented environmental cooperation. The diet included the diet included dried fruits for year-round use. Southern Western Pueblo diet was mostly agricultural products with wild foods and small game. After the first contact foods and changes after encounters with Europeans brought new foods and animals: sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, peaches, melons, wheat, and more. Sheep became central to Navajo culture and lifestyle. Native American foods like tomatoes, potatoes, chilies, and more were adopted into European cuisine. Indian Removal Act in 1830 and the Trail of Tears displaced native peoples, disrupting foodways. Forced relocation led to government-issued rations. Flour, lard, coffee, sugar, and canned meats like Spam were also used for those. Many native people became dependent on these rations. They even started to create Indian tacos, which was bread with toppings, became a creative mix of rations and traditional foods. Moving on to fusion in Aboriginal and European cuisine, you could see the chicken parmesan is up there along with kangaroo steak. It's kind of odd to see the chicken parmesan up there when it's not really a food you would think that would come from Australia. But because of the food cultures that are merging together from the Europeans, they were able to pick up and add this to their diverse food culture. As you can see at the bottom left also is laksa. It is more of a spicy noodle soup with Southeast Asian roots commonly enjoyed in northern Australia. But the kangaroo steak is a unique seared Australian protein that the locals love to eat. Vegemite is a spread that is an acquired taste but is a staple as you can see in the top right corner. And last but not least is one of their main favorites is meat pie. Is a comfort food commonly eaten at sports events and picnics. To move on to the modern Australian cuisine, a lot of native ingredients are an explosion of interest. Indigenous ingredients marks a defining shift in Australian cuisine. Native ingredients like wattle seed, bush tomatoes, and emu are becoming more popular, but this is a frustration over how long it took to embrace them into their society. Modern Asian Australian fusion is the rise of Australian fusion, particularly Southeast Asian flavors, is making Australian cuisine unique. Chefs like Eileen Aguirre and Francis de la Cruz are using local Australian ingredients to create distinctive Filipino and Vietnamese dishes. Seafood is central to this fusion with ingredients like scampi, Australian prawns, and Jervis Bay mussels. The regional diversity in Australian food is increasing, particularly in areas like Tasmania and northern NSW. Regional cuisine is emerging as a distinct part of Australian food culture, influenced by local produce and seafood. As you can see, the Australian locals tend to use what is available in their everyday lives, which also shows you how they can progress through society norms while it's going through with their food. The reason this is going on is because they have been used to adapting to these different food cultures from century to century. Australian food is not simply meat pies, pavlovas, or chicken rolls. The complexity of Australia's culinary identity reflects in its complicated history as a multicultural nation. Fusion of culinary traditions combines different cooking styles, often from the chef's background and local global influences. Some example dishes for this would be Vietnamese herbs with French techniques, Italian pasta with Japanese flavors. These hybrid dishes represent a fresh take on familiar flavors, redefining the dining experience in Australia. Why is this trending, you might ask? Australia's diverse population has many that are born overseas or identify with multiple cultures. And this is reflected in the food scene that is bringing it to the everyday lives of these guys' new palates. Increased appreciation for creativity is creating diners that are seeking unique food experience, moving treat beyond traditional dishes. Innovation. Third culture cuisine offers unexpected combinations that surprise and delight food lovers that are coming from around the globe now. Before, it used to be just European and the Aboriginal food cultures that were combining, but now they have a Southeast Asia food culture that is starting to combine with them as well, which is why we can get those foods back in slide 7 or 6, sorry, like laksa with the spicy noodles. The Aboriginal food traditions have laid the foundation for Australia's unique connection to native ingredients, with a growing appreciation for native produce like wattle seed and bush tomatoes. In the 18th century, brought dramatic changes to both food production and consumption, introducing new animals, crops, and culinary introduces, which is the arrival of the European settlers. The diverse climates come from the country's foster of a wide range of agricultural products from the tropical fruits in the north to the grains and dairy in the south, while the arid interior supports livestock and native bush foods. As Australia continues to embrace its multicultural identity, the rise of third culture cuisine is redefining dining experiences. That this fusion of global and local ingredients is not just a trend, but a reflection of the nation's evolving cultural landscape. From kangaroo steaks to laksa and the resurgence of indigenous ingredients, Australian food culture today is a vibrant mix of influences, traditions, and innovations. As the country continues to explore its culinary roots and future, the story of food in Australia is a dynamic blend of history, creativity, and the unique connection between people and the land. And here's my works cited piece. Thank you.